All right, welcome everyone to today's panel discussion. We have calls like this in SpenglerFox community to discuss various topics, and today we're very lucky to have a diverse and rather interesting panel. We decided to explore the topic that's been on everyone's agenda for the big part of this year and will probably continue to be of concern. That's the future of offices. And we didn't want to just carry on what predominantly was talked about around the world. We wanted to take three different viewpoints and compare them. And that's why you will have in our panel today representatives of essentially different fields: the property owner and operator, the chief people officer, and the global real estate and facilities manager from a corporate side. So I'm going to pass over to my colleague, David, who will introduce our panelists in turn and then lead us further into the call. David, hello, nice to see you.
Hi, morning, good to see you all. So our first guest is Lohan Prezenca, who's been in the music industry for over 20 years with Ministry of Sound. Latest venture has been the launch of the ministry, pioneering social work space. And Lohan will tell us a little bit about himself and his current venture.
I think you've covered the ground, David. I mean, I'm executive chairman of Ministry of Sound, and I've been at the helm of the business for about 15 years. Having joined over 20 years ago, you'll see a cat behind me.
Right. The COVID world.
Welcome to the world of video conferencing. And we, about 3 years ago, we moved into a workspace, and we a flexible workspace for creative industries, but now broadening out to the TMT sector in a 50,000 square foot Victorian warehouse in southeast London. It's been a very interesting experience of moving into this sector and then also adapting during the time of COVID and post-COVID and understanding what I want from a workspace in circumstances where environments like this and work from home and video conferencing are becoming ever more prevalent. I hope that I can bring some insight into what the future of work might look like post-COVID.
Thanks, Lohan. We're also joined by Yeşim Aksu, who for the last 25 years has been in executive HR roles, primarily in the high-tech industry, has worked for major international corporations as well as startups. Great to have you here, Yeşim. And please introduce yourself.
Hello, yes, Yeşim Aksu here. I have worked as HR executive in various countries with various companies, as you said, mostly in the technology industry. I lived and worked in Asia, in Europe, in several sites, in Middle East. And also I have some experience with Mexico and the US. So actually I have a quite diverse cultural background, geographical and cultural. It gives me good insight into my function HR, which is like a crucial thing when you work with different types of people with different background. And this topic is really exciting for me. It's something that is, as you said, on I mean, it's on everybody's agenda, and it's really interesting to discuss. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Yeşim. And our third guest is Vladimir Senikov, who is currently Global Real Estate Asset Strategy and Facilities Management Director for one of the largest mobile network operators. And once he's introduced himself, he has a presentation he's going to share with us. Vladimir.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yes, I'm Vladimir. I have actually the similar experience like Yeşim. I have visited 65 countries, and I was working for at least 6 months in 5 big regions like South Africa, London, Amsterdam, US, China, Singapore. So I have spent 10 years in Hewlett Packard, also a big telecom company. I was responsible for the Middle East, Africa, Eastern and Northern Europe. Then I became a chairman of the big real estate investment fund, Queen Group. From Queen Group, I moved to France, to Steelcase, and so far I am in Vion, in Beeline, responsible for the whole global real estate.
Great, thank you very much. I think you have your presentation ready to share with us?
Yes, it should be Dmitry who is supposed to be
Okay.
provided this from the...
You just give me the green light and I'm starting to share.
Go ahead.
Excellent. I'm sharing my screen. Whenever you want the next slide, just say next.
Okay, okay, yeah. I'll try to be brief and keeping in mind that this presentation is recorded, then everybody could use it from the share source from Dmitry. So this is my brief history where I used to work. And the topic of our presentation is to really discuss how the remote working will affect the corporate real estate. As you can see, we are moving not even right now after the COVID, but even before COVID, from the permanent office space to remote work activities. Why it happens? Please, Dmitry, next slide. It happened because of the agile office environment. I will come to this topic during the next slide, but right now, as you can see, our offices are almost empty. I was talking to my colleague, Kevin Reader in UK, and he told me that in London right now, the occupancy of the offices is only 25%, in Birmingham 30%, in Liverpool 25%. So as you can see, my figure, 50–70%, they're applicable, for example, for Moscow, but for the Western Europe, except especially right now, when we are looking at the lockdown in Germany, in Netherlands, the occupancy could be close to 25%. Please, Dmitry, next slide. As I mentioned before, it's not a big surprise for the corporate real estate because the agile working happened even before. A lot of high technology companies, I will show the list a little bit later, already used to work in the agile working environment, which means that they already provided remote working style from home, from different locations like trains, airports, hotels, during the business travel, using the co-working. Next one. These are the companies which were the pioneers in the agile style offices. You can see high-tech companies like Google, Microsoft. You can see oil company, British Petroleum, British Telecom, another telecom company, consulting company, Ernst & Young, Cisco, Vodafone, another telecom company. I also put two Russian companies, which also provides the visibility. And while the agile style office was so popular and become so popular, because it's really influence on productivity, work-life balance, sustainability, business continuity, employee brand, wellness, efficiency. I'm sure it's all this terminology is very close to HR topic. So Ishim could comment this topic later on as well. Please, Dmitry, next one. And how does remote working affect the real estate? Of course, the answer number one, it's cost. Cost, cost, and cost. Because the offices are becoming empty and it's not a very smart solution to pay for your empty office. It's a lot of OPEX and CAPEX spending from the tenant side. Please, the next slide, Dmitry. And the trend is when we eventually return to the workplace, we can expect it to be very different. This topic is very popular right now. That's why we are discussing this topic right now during our panel discussion. So a lot of my colleagues, a lot of corporate real estate experts believe that the future in corporate real estate would be really different. And I will try to persuade you why it's supposed to happen. Next one, Dmitry. As you can see, there are two trends in the corporate real estate. One trend is to convert our offices into the smart office category. We are going to introduce mobile access, remote conference calls, meeting room e-booking, mobile printing, smart lockers, digital wayfinding, desk utilization via desk sharing. And the goal is to maximize the efficiency of this portfolio. Next slide, please. Sharing ratio, it's one of the practical approach how the corporate real estate is trying to decrease the cost. Let's say the natural vacancy is 1.2. You have your employees on the sick leave, you have your employees on the training, on holidays. So usually you have 80% occupancy in your office, which means sharing ratio 1.2. So we expect that after the COVID, when the remote working is really become popular, the sharing ratio would be 1.7 or even 2. So it means that the corporate institutions could reduce their space by 50, 70, even 80%. Next slide. And these are practical guidance. It's very useful among HR people how to implement the sharing ratio for different types of departments. As you can see, almost all of them are applicable to use the sharing ratio. The only exemption is the top management, but so far, a lot of vice presidents also agree to implement sharing ratio and share their desk with other top management employees. So in this case, this guidance formula will also increase. I would say from 1.2, the average would be 1.5 up to 2 employees per one desk. Next slide, please. Another office trend, as I mentioned before, a part of the smart offices is a cost optimization. And there are typical examples how to provide your cost optimization via space reduction, via sublease, via sales of the real estate assets, cost reduction in your operational and CapEx expenses, and of course, utilities and security cost optimization. If you have less space, your technical maintenance cost, your security and utilities cost would be also tried to minimum. Next slide, please. Real estate golden rules. It's a legal topic, but why it's very important. Right now, a lot of corporate real estate functions would like to be really very flexible. Especially it's valid for banks who have a lot of own properties. It's also valid for the big corporations where the space are really big. And the top management is really interested, together with the corporate real estate, to have flexible legal conditions in your real estate rental agreements, how to optimize the space in case of need. I would not read all these sentences. You can do it yourself, but as you can see, they are logical. So the lease shouldn't allow non-structural alterations without consent. We know this because we are real estate professionals, but not a lot of companies follow these golden rules. So the future trend is to implement these golden rules in all types of rental agreements. Next slide, please. Sublease equals savings. And as you can see, there are two major impacts from this slide: how to get rid of your vacant area and how to achieve financial savings from this. Sometimes, even if you're not allowed to reduce your space physically, for example, you have to wait for another 2 years to reduce your space, you can convert your space into the dark side. In this case, your utilities cost would be less than before. It will also impact financial provisions, which will impact your EBITDA. So together with your finance manager, you have to sit together and see what could be done in terms of the potential savings. Next slide, Dmitry. What size should be have my office? Just look at the bottom side of this slide. There are three major categories which are becoming very important in our days. How to calculate properly gross external area, gross internal area, and net internal area. If you carefully provide these three dimensions and calculations, you will definitely find some vacant space which would be possible to get additional savings. So this is just a guidance how to do it properly. Next slide, please. And smart asset management, of course, it's one of the trends. Real estate, it's an asset. It's a company asset. It's like people, but it's a real estate. So we are trying to implement a lot of digital solutions, which will help us how to properly deal with asset management versus facility management, how to properly provide digital building management. There are a lot of real estate software which could be used to help us in this direction. Of course, we need to use lease admin system, not only simple Excel slides for our calculations, and asset planning manager to predict the amount of the people to be reduced or hired for a new office. In this case, we can properly focus the new space of the new size of our offices. Next slide, please. And of course, the change management. Change management is how to change your mindset, because all the changes are coming from our brain. And our employees should be really persuaded by the company management that their work is what you do, not where you do it. This is very important exercise. And next slide, please. I will show you how to do it properly and who should be involved. First of all, what kind of impact on the real estate? It's how to optimize the workplace solutions, how to provide the cost savings initiatives, which include sublease and disposal, how to implement the new office space standards, how to change management for employees, I mean management approach, change management approach. And of course, the real estate KPIs. And next one. Change is good, but how to do it? And the next one would be there an answer to this question. So, as you can see, it's really very important to have HR as your main driver of this project realization. Then you need to include all your top management team, CEO, CFO, management board, and you have to create community of your change ambassadors. Usually the assistants and secretary of your top management are very good as a members of change ambassadors. And of course, HR policy, which should be really include parts of the remote working as a part of the HR policy. And IT should be your right hand to prepare the digital solutions which will help to provide proper solutions for the remote workers. And the next one is actually my last slide. So you can see the difference, what was before the COVID and what we expect would be after the COVID. So this slide is self-explanatory. It's related to your office environment, to your meeting opportunities, to your business travel, etc. And my last slide, Dmitry, would be your questions and your feedback about my presentation, of course.
Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you very much. I think it opens a lot of thoughts, or at least it opened, for me, my eyes on how real estate in the corporate world really works. Thank you for that. I'd like to bring Lohan to the discussion because I think in his story, and I would like to ask Lohan to tell us a bit more about the creative serviced office space that they're developing. In his story, I think they're basing it around the creativity engagement aspect of people, and especially in the entertainment industry, which Lohan is part. It's crucially important. So, Lohan, would you tell us about your example and also share your views on what strategies should organizations use to preserve that creativity, that level of innovation that you could previously get by coming to a nice office space, and that now, obviously, in COVID, you cannot get so easily.
Well, firstly, thank you, Dmitry, and also can I say, Vladimir, I think that was an excellent presentation. I think it covers so many of the questions and challenges that companies and larger corporations are facing at the moment, and a lot of the questions that as a provider of flexible workspace have been asked over the last 9 months as we've gone into this crisis. It's interesting in developing our offer, which we did about 3 or 4 years ago. We'd always come at it from the perspective of experience. We had not looked at the market for flexible workspace and the providers that were in there. And, you know, we know who the usual suspects are, the IWG and the WeWorks of the world. We didn't know and had experience of those ourselves. We obviously have seen what corporate offices look like, but our base had always been the way that we run our own business, which was in a large open plan, fantastic amenity and facilities, with a whole group of different people in different industries working together in a very fluid and creative environment, with the social aspects of work being paramount. And it gave us a very customer-centric view of how the workspace should be shaped. As hospitality providers ourselves, people who have run nightclubs and bars over many years, we really looked at the hospitality angle of providing space for people to work in, not necessarily just the provision of desks and the allocation of square footage per desk and per person, and the amenities that were in there, and the way that meeting rooms and spaces were being used. That was all very important. We started to look at it from the perspective of experience and what made people happy. And it's very interesting that COVID has shone a greater light on those requirements, given that we have all discovered our own ability to be able to work remotely and use technology for our work. We've all started to question, well, what is the purpose of the office? And why will people want to use the office in the future? And the office is just there to provide desks, internet connection, and meeting room, and a coffee machine and a water cooler, then I don't think it's going to serve a purpose for what the demands of the post-COVID workspace will be. We have already started to look at health and well-being as a major part of our provision for customers, because particularly post-COVID, people are very concerned about not only their physical health, but also their mental health and mental well-being. So the provision of facilities and the ability to break out from your normal work environment to a space where you can focus on fitness and wellness and mental well-being have become very important, but also the provision of such as food and beverage outlets and the opportunity to network and communicate with other people. So when we started developing our own space, rather than packing it full of a hive of offices with as many desks as possible, we gave a much greater allocation of shared amenity and shared facilities, which include our first offering, event spaces for conferences, product launches, and even fitness classes and yoga and music events to a bar, and you walk into a very vibrant bar and lobby, to food and beverage outlet where we operate that ourselves. We don't outsource third-party catering providers. We prepare healthy, affordable, freshly prepared food daily for grab and go. Again, this is not about building a restaurant, because people don't want to eat at a restaurant when they're at work. They want to take food up to their desk. To a suite of very well designed and well rooms, because that's what companies, when they are going to come together post-COVID, you're going to want a lot more space for meeting and sharing ideas, not necessarily space for sitting at desks, because you can effectively sit at a desk in your own home. And then when you come to the offices themselves, we want to provide very flexible space for our customers and what it is that they want. You know, for example, one of my largest customers previously had a private office of 75 staff. They've obviously gone through the challenges of COVID and have had to make a number of redundancies. They don't want to necessarily be held to the requirement to pay for a lease on 75 desks post-COVID. Their flexible contract allows them to come back to us and say, well, this isn't necessarily what we want anymore. They've actually come back to us and said, well, what we require now is an office for 6 people, and then 2 days a week we want space to bring 40 staff into the office and give them the ability to meet, discuss, share ideas, and then go away again back to their old places. But also they want to be able to drop in on an ad hoc basis and use the amenities and use the facilities and use the gym and come and join some of the classes and come to events and come to use our cinema, which we have. So we're now working with them on a flexible arrangement where they have elements of hot desking, elements of private desk, elements of membership, elements of being able to dip into and share block books of meeting rooms, and change the furnishings in their office and change the experience that they're having. So I think the post-COVID environment will be much more about, well, what is it that my people want? What is the experience that they want? What is it that makes them happy? What can I provide for them that they can't get from a computer in their kitchen? How can we best enable collaborative and creative working? And this doesn't just go for the creative industries, it goes for any business, because what, particularly with young people, we found people are craving is that connection, that human connection. At the beginning of the crisis, there was lots of virtue signaling, I believe, going on from large corporations saying, you don't need to return to the office for 12 months. No, you don't need to return to the office for 18 months. No, we're never going to have work in the office ever again. And I thought the whole thing was completely ridiculous, because if you take yourself back, and I tried to take myself back to my early 20s when I was just starting my working life, being around other people, seeing how they work, learning, also striving to succeed and impress people yourself, that's not something you can do on a Zoom call or on a Teams call. You need to be with people, you need to connect with people, you need to learn, you need to be able to shine, and that can only happen in a collaborative working environment. So I think whereas now we're 9 months into the crisis, and at the beginning when we were 2 or 3 months in, everyone thought, oh, well, this working from home is quite nice and I don't need to commute to the office anymore, and you know, I can get up 2 hours later and I can finish work 2 hours earlier and I can go and have lunch in my kitchen and it's all lovely. Now we're all going slightly mad because we can't stand our families, and we hate being in the same room every day, and there's no difference between the week and the weekend, holidays and work, and you know, we all need to get back to being with people. I think it's very important that the office environment creates that opportunity to connect and to socialize and to share ideas and to create. So I'm acutely aware that I've spoken flat out for about 10 minutes now, so I'll take a pause for breath.
That's great stuff. Yeah, very interesting.
Really insightful. Thank you, Lohan. And yes, a very, I think, important perspective on the well-being, the wellness, and also the young talent development that sometimes needs that collaborative space to just simply get the most out of work and learning. And speaking of learning, I'd like to now turn over to Yeshim, and from the perspective of Chief People Officer, if she can share with us her view on all the processes that before COVID were taking place physically, like the leadership workshop, the learning development programs, recruiting of staff, interviewing and onboarding of staff. How has that changed in your opinion? And how should it be treated in the future going forward? What's the best model there for those processes?
Yes, so I absolutely agree with Lohan's point that offices will not disappear. I mean, even companies have seen this big savings of expenses when they don't have an office and when they can rent it out and sublease the office. Of course, there is a big expense saving. However, and I think as a result, offices will get smaller. I think those ratios that Vlad was showing, it will be even more drastic because companies have seen, we have been working like this for 10 months and it works, right? I mean, life goes on. Companies are not stopping, so it will continue. But there will be offices in a much smaller scale, but they will be there. Of course, for HR, for us, lots of things change as a result of that. You mentioned learning. I think in the learning area, there was already a big trend of having online courses, and because it's doable, it's much more cost efficient, and people can just do it. It's lots of time saving as well. So most of the courses were switching to online anyways. I think that trend will just going forward post-COVID will remain there, and it will just increase. However, nothing beats face-to-face training, of course. I mean, the face-to-face interaction, collaboration in some courses that we are providing with leadership, especially leadership courses and teamwork and so on. You, of course, get a better result when it is face-to-face. However, then there are lots of mentorship and coaching kind of support that we are giving our employees. They will definitely switch to, they have already, and they will remain online. And I think post-COVID, some of the crucial stuff that we can't just compromise on quality, it will come back. So that part of face-to-face learning will come back, but again, the online part will just increase. And I don't think it's a big of a problem. I don't think people are making, it's not a big headache. Recruitment, of course, has changed a lot. You can see with big companies, big corporations, they were using video recruitment quite a lot. I think smaller companies were more on a traditional, they would like to have some more interaction and meet the candidates face to face. But now we have also seen that video interviews work quite very well. There is nothing wrong with that. I remember like some years ago, when I was interviewing for a role in China, I was recruited via video and I just packed my stuff and moved to China, a country I've never been before. So it worked actually, and I think there during the past 10 months, there have been lots of recruitment and interviews done this way. So it works very well, and I think that is also something that will remain. Of course, post-COVID, some of the face-to-face interviews will come back for sure. However, there is always a downside side to that for us, especially because we were advertising. We were using the office space and all that collaboration and all the fancy stuff that we have in the office. We were using this for talent attraction. We wanted the candidates to come over, see our kitchen, see our collaboration area, and just, I mean, it was an attraction tool for us. That has been taken away from us. I mean, you can always, of course, use videos and you can show them. But then again, thinking of flexible working, which is, we all agree is the way forward, the candidates will not make, I mean, the candidate will not have a dedicated office workspace anymore, a desk anymore. So that is different. So what's the point of seeing the office in a way, right? I think for us as HR, we have to be just, we are changing the ways that how we are attracting the talent. So it's still, we use like those collaboration areas that Lohan was mentioning. I think it will remain, and we will definitely use this for attraction and for engagement, but then also some other memberships and maybe some other benefits that we will provide for our employees. I know that many companies are during this COVID era, they are providing lots of gym memberships, or some counseling support for their employees. Many companies are providing ergonomic desks and chairs, printers, scanners, computers, everything, so that the employees can actually work. So maybe these kind of tools and what we are providing for employees will just be more and more. When it comes to onboarding, I think that is still an area where HR and especially the leaders have to be very careful about. When people are joining the company, it's always, you're an outsider, you're just coming in and you want to connect, you want to build a network with the other employees. You don't know who's there in marketing and who's in accounting, how do I do my expenses and so on. So there is, I mean, the onboarding process itself, it is online. I mean, many companies now doing it online with digital signature and so on. You don't need to go into the office. But then there is a big portion of that where in the onboarding process, where there are lots of meetings and interactions where we are actually engaging the employee and introducing the employee to different key people in the organization. So I think going forward, it will be the job of HR and the immediate line manager to make sure these connections, now it has to be online, have to take place. But I think, especially with the younger workforce, I don't see it much of an issue, because the younger workforce is really used to working like this. And what we have seen in the past 10 months is people are working from Portugal or from Spain or from anywhere else. And they prefer to do it like this. And actually also going forward, they want to work like this and just come to the office maybe once a month when they come to London or wherever they are working. So I think it will remain, and we need to be more flexible. I think some regulations and laws, employment laws, needs to be more flexible, because employees really don't need to be in the office. But then again, I agree that we have to give them some kind of area where they come and still connect with their employees.
Thank you. Yes, and I think it was also evident from the ratios in one of the slides of Vladimir's presentation that different fields, different functions in the company, they are either more adaptable to sharing, or they have smaller sharing ratios. And I noticed that, for example, technology functions, they had a high ratio of sharing, which is your typical collaboration, and programmers like to mingle, as well as commercial functions. And what got me thinking, and David, I'm going to bring you to the call, the sales, the client outreach in post-COVID-19 world. I mean, how do you've been in client relations for, I think, over 25 years, right? And you're speaking to a lot of leadership type people. So how does that changed with COVID-19, and what should be the kind of strategy going forward there?
Well, I think I think that there's less time for informal discussion. So before, we used to meet people for lunch or a coffee, which felt like a bit more easy to develop business in that format without a hard agenda. Nowadays, if you call a Zoom meeting with a potential client, it feels a lot more formal. People have to set time aside. There has to be a reason for it. It's less social and more business oriented. I think that there's also the worry that you sometimes commit a little bit more time than you normally would. So when you arrange a Zoom call with someone, there's almost, you block out an hour in the diary. There isn't always necessarily that amount of time that's needed. So I think that it's putting some structure around conversations that previously might have been a bit more fluid and a bit more relaxed. I think that if you're doing business in a new way with companies and customers you've not dealt with before. It's more difficult to develop a relationship, I think, in this type of environment. You know, not being able to, it's funny, but not being able to shake someone's hand and sit down with them in a room makes a difference to your ability to develop a relationship. So a lot of the work that I've been doing recently in the last, you know, has been with people I've dealt with for 20 years who know me. I've already sat down with them and, you know, and know me well. So I think it's harder to form new relationships. And I see this with candidates. You know, we've completed a number of searches where the candidates haven't physically met their new employer. I know, Yeshim, you've said, you know, you had your interviews for China and you packed your bag and you went, but not everyone's as confident as that. And not every organization's as confident to bring in senior talent without having physically met them. And it's starting to make people a bit more nervous about moving and stuff. So for sure, I mean, it's a necessity now, isn't it, to have this sort of business development via Zoom and via, you know, less on a phone call. I mean, I don't know if any of you made a phone call recently. It feels really odd to talk to someone without seeing them about an important issue. You almost feel like, oh, we've got to get on Zoom to actually have a proper conversation. It feels a bit, I don't know, unsatisfactory just to have an audio conversation nowadays. But I always try to meet people. It makes such a big difference. I don't share your confidence, Yeshim, so much in feeling that Zoom can replace that. I mean, it's a necessary evil right now, but you can't be meeting someone socially, seeing how they interact with other people, not just you. Anyway,
I agree with you. I mean, I agree. Nothing can beat the face-to-face interaction. But I think what we have learned is it's okay. It's not that bad. It's like it can work. And that's why I think it definitely, like some training and some of the face-to-face interviews and an office space, even though it's smaller, will come back. It will definitely, and even the travel will come back, but everything in a smaller size. That's what I think.
And finally, I also think that some people are suffering from Zoom fatigue. So, you know, I'll speak to people and they'll, you know, if I catch them at the end of the day, they've literally been at their desk on the screen for the whole day, because people will fill their diaries up back to back. Whereas in the office environment, physical environment, you know, you might pop around the corner for a coffee, you might meet someone at the water cooler, you might even just go in and using the bathroom on the fourth floor, you know, you might bump into someone. I think a lot of opportunities are lost because you haven't got that fluidity of interaction.
I do hope you go to use the bathroom, David, and you don't.
No, I've got a bucket under my desk. I never leave the desk. No, but I think, you know, people get, you know, I think people, you know, before you know it, you look around, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you literally haven't left your desk. You've got like these calls one after another, which are great, but it's you know, you lose that, I don't know, the fun part of just being fluid in an office environment.
I think, I mean, I totally agree with you. And now there are lots of companies and that are developing some tools, some kind of social interaction tools that function on a platform with in-house. So it's like just to replace that, exactly those interactions that you said, like meeting at the water cooler, meeting at the kitchen, having a chat about what you have done on the weekend, and so on and so forth. So they were planning, or the aim is actually to replace that with some kind of online collaboration tool. And I had the chance to look at a couple of those and give also my input. I really don't think they would work, just for the reasons that you just said, David. It's because you're sitting there like 5 or 6 hours straight in Zoom calls and so on. And the last thing that you want to do is look at a screen again, even if it's for social interaction, right? You don't want to do that. So that's why I think those kind of tools actually will not fly. And as far as I could just talk to companies, they had who have implemented these kind of tools, like some kind of Facebook that works internally, where you have like dog lovers, book clubs, and yoga clubs, and so on. They said that very few people are actually using those tools, because when you have like a 30 minutes, you want to go for a walk or just have a chat with your partner or to be with your kids, you don't want to sit in front of the screen, because it does not replace exactly what you are missing. It does not. It's just again another time in front of the screen.
Lohan made a very good point. Sorry, Lohan, you were saying about earlier in your career when you first got into work. It's all about. I mean, my niece has just started working in law, and she sat at home, you know, she should be going for drinks after work with her newfound colleagues. She should be learning about how to, and it's all right for us. I mean, I actually don't mind, you know, this, but to Lohan's point, I mean, you go into any of his offices, there's a buzz about it, a feeling of, yeah, involvement and inclusion.
It's very important to distinguish between what are we doing as a result of the crisis and how we are getting through it, and then what will the world be like afterwards, and what are the aspects of remote working that we will take out of it, but what are the great aspects of collaboration and sharing that we want to get back to. And so a lot of these interim ideas for, oh no, let's have a, you know, we've all done the pub quizzes and the home bingo. We've all tried to have drinks parties with our friends, and we've all gone to, well, I've gone to some streaming parties and discos and, you know, a nightclub event, and, you know, the novelty of them for the first few hours works, and then afterwards you don't repeat those experiences. They are a pale imitation of what connectivity and collaboration and being with people is like afterwards. So I think we need to distinguish between what do we have to do to get through this, and while we're in the middle of it, but what will the world be like on the other side? And let's take the good things we've learned about online and working from home and mix them. So, you know, that commute, and, you know, I speak from personal experience, having done a you know, 3 to 4 hours worth of commuting for the last 25 years, you know, to take that out of the mix and to have that time back is a really valuable win for people, and gives so much more to their quality of life. The obligation to be at your desk at 9 a.m. every day and to be there solidly safe for your lunch break until 5:30 p.m. every day is a sort of ridiculous requirement to give people that time back, but also to acknowledge the value that they get out of being together. So it's about taking the best of what we've learned and leaving the worst of what we've learned behind.
Okay. Any closing or final comments from you, Vladimir, before we start wrapping up?
Yes, I fully agree with Yeshim, with David. The office space environment in future would be much more collaborative. There would be much space for wellness, for different benefits which could be useful for employees from HR point of view, not only from the real estate point of view. There would be much more attractions in the office for this collaborative environment. And these additional things would be compensated by this potential savings. So for the company, it's really important how to attract the best talent employees, how to convert the office space into the space where you feel like at home. So this home style environment would be becoming like a standard for a new office space. This is my comment.
Actually, I'm sorry, if we have time, Vladimir, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Now that we all agree, and I think that's very likely, that office spaces will be smaller, and there will be less need for offices. But what is going to happen to all those buildings, these skyscrapers? There's so much office space that will potentially be not used. So going forward, what's going to happen to all that space?
I would predict two trends. First trend, a lot of companies will try to move to the co-working space. You have your office environment with already purchased furniture, no expense on refurbishment, etc., etc. So right now, a lot of banks, big corporations, especially in the US, moving to the WeWork and their competitor space. The others, like banks who owned, not least they owned a lot of property, they are trying either to sublease it or to sell it. They're trying to convert their bank premises, I don't know, into the hotels or whatever, if it's possible. But there would be a big demand into the sales activities. So right now, real estate consultants are very active how to implement the request from big corporations to dispose their space. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it is supposed to be like a real estate crisis. Vice versa, there would be a lot of cheaper space. So a lot of small companies will have chance to lease this small amount of space inside of the city, not in the suburbs, and they will convert the space in a much more attractive collaborative environment.
Mm-hmm.
This is my answer on your question.
Will be interesting to see. Yeah.
I think it's very important though, because I think that's absolutely right, and I think there will be a trend to co-working and repurposing of space. But unfortunately, real estate, as it currently stands, is not very good at that conversion and not very good at providing services and operating these places and providing services, providing hospitality for people is a completely different skill set to renting office space and signing a long-term lease, collecting the rent and doing 10-year refurbishment. So I think the real estate industry has got some particular challenges in front of it, which can be met by skilled operators who understand and are very customer-centric and focused on what people will require at the end of this.
Yes, one more topic for you. The change management is really required not only for the top management, but also for the real estate employees as well, because they're so conservative in this direction. I agree.
Sounds good.
Also, working from home means that you can have kittens with you.
Yeah.
Sure.
We didn't expect that. So, Lohan, you have to ask him or her or it if he's okay with our privacy policy that this video will go viral.
Lohan, can't people bring?
I think that was a yes.
Your offices, Lohan.
Actually, our offices are very dog friendly, and there are we've got all sorts of facilities for dogs. Being dog friendly, that means that they're very cat unfriendly, I suspect.
Brilliant.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been a very pleasant discussion. We are closing our panel today, and it will soon be available to our community on our social media. For those who are interested to reach out to our speakers, I guess the best way to do it is via LinkedIn or any other social media platforms. And I'm sure we will see each other again in some other interesting conversation in 2021. But before that, let's stay still healthy and safe throughout the holiday periods, and let's keep it up and see each other soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks for organizing, Dmitry.
Thanks, Dmitry, and thanks, colleagues.
See you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.